And welcome. As we, the world, the collective, have been experiencing a significant amount of devastation, forest fires in particular, fear has been ignited within our deeper selves, impacting us all on an individual level and extending into the connectedness with the greater collective. I am joined by Marcus Dupuis, founder of Elemental Living and author of the book I Breathe, Therefore I Am. And we are going to dive into the topic of fear, what this emotion and experience is all about, and how to work with it for greater self awareness and to help shift the energy within. Marcus, thank you for being here. And going back into the mention of breath with regards to your book, we are certainly, we have been compromised lately. As you and I live closely together, we don't live too far from one another here in British Columbia. And in fact, our province has been in a state of emergency for some time, not to mention in other areas in the world. So let's dive into this topic and the hot topic of your thoughts and current events, and on the topic of fear.
Great. Well, yeah, nice to be here, Tara. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I mean, the fear factor is something that has a great effect on us as a species. Well, all species actually have a relationship to fear that is actually pretty deep rooted and has a great influence. Our latest little bout with fires got quite close to you, didn't it? It was,
Yeah.
and yeah, fire is the one, fear element that's being affecting our society and and keeping us in a place of insecurity, right? And so, yeah, it's important to sort of be comfortable in ourselves and in how we deal with that, and so, yeah, it's a turbulent time on many levels, right? The fear factor here is there are two types of fears, right? There's a physical fear and there's mental fear. And physical fear is where our actual physical being in reality is threatened. And so it's not an opinion, it's not an idea, it's not a construct, it's not a belief system. It's actually happening, right? This is that primal fear factor. And so fire is coming in close to our homes and threatening us. My sister lives in Hawaii and has had major dealings with fire as well. Not the Lahaina one, which is the latest one that just happened, but on the Big Island, it was volcanoes and that kind of fire flowing down the mountain, cut off the road, cut off contact to her community and everything. So, and that came pretty close even for us here, right? In BC with the fires coming down to the highways, some of my friends and family have just had to rearrange their whole plans because the fires were leaping across the highway. So it has, when it's a physical fear like that, a physical threat, it's something that we can't ignore and we really have to deal with. So it's interesting how, we've gotten through this particular time. The rain has returned now, but there's different types of fear. So that first fear, the fear of fire, we can talk about at different levels because there's the physical factor, but then how does that affect us in our decisions and what we do with our lives and what we do with our days? That is, it segues into the mental relationship to fear. And so anyways, we're past the fear factor now for us, right? We're back to safety.
Well, the biggest aspect I was experiencing, and we, as you mentioned, we had it fairly close to where I'm staying right now, where I'm living, and there were helicopters and bombers constantly, and having that action close by, and then people around being triggered by this occurrence and becoming um, well, start feeling the fear within themselves. And it was really interesting observing other people and then observing myself, how I was feeling because of what was happening around, what was happening with other people, and then also this fear of loss that started to creep in within myself. And I was being very observant, and I actually was really feeling the fear, which I haven't felt in some time. And I recorded another episode on this as well, of this attachment that we have, working through these layers of, what if I lose everything? It becomes an emotional reaction. The mental is thinking about the worst case scenario. Um, Also working with other people and whatever's happening in our environment, trying to understand that and understand people. So when these situations show up, they trigger something that's so deep within ourselves, within our subconscious, within our, even our trauma self, those emotions, those energies within.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe touch on that, on how it reacts within our inner self, what's going on, body, mind, emotions, what, and how to maybe even work through it if people are experiencing this within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, just in speaking in real time here, because we're talking about a real experience that just happened, which is really cool, because I love attaching a lot of these ideas, these philosophical ideas and interpretations, to a real event, right? And so one of my neighbors was operating from a place of great fear, and in fact was loading up a camper and getting all kinds of supplies and loading up, tanks of water, and was really in that fear of losing his home, fear of losing his situation, right? Well, he's my neighbor, and I'm here on in my place, not thinking that way at all. I'm not having any of these panic reactions, and not fearing it to that point. I'm actually in a very calm state. Maybe it's because I do a lot of deep breathing, but and so there's a great example of two people being faced with the same scenario, the same situation, and having a different reaction. So why is that? We are an accumulation of our experiences. We are an accumulation of our story. We are the things that have happened to us. And so we our reactions are based on our life experience and based on our past experiences and our past traumas and our past emergencies that may have happened. And so because we're all different landscapes, we all have such a unique experience. It makes us all it makes us all unique beings, so this whole idea of individuality, and we are independent, and we have, I have my own way, yeah, we're all different, but on another level, we're all the same. So we all have the same needs. We all have the same, you know, yeah, we all have the same needs for survival and all of that. But our reaction to these threats and these things that happen is based on our experience and based on what has happened in our past. And some people, I was actually quite surprised at the panic in one of my neighbors. The panic was a real fear, like his eyes were wild. He was really, really afraid. And so myself, I'm sitting here going, no, this shall pass. It's fine. Everything's good. So how do you explain that different reaction to the same thing? Well, it's our personal experience and our relationship to trauma, our relationship to danger, to threat. What is a threat and what isn't a threat? In terms of that, the physical fear that we're talking about, which in a big way is, it's physical, it's coming at us in a physical way. Personally, my relationship to nature, my connection to nature, somehow did not make me fear the event. Like I felt deep in my core that things would work itself out. Stuff was going to burn, but it wouldn't be my house. And so our relationship to threats and to danger is based on our past experiences. And that's what I usually delve into when trying to help someone understand their reaction to something, is that, what may have happened in one's past that would trigger that kind of reaction, the fear reaction, right?
Mhm.
So that's one place that we can go when we're trying to figure out why we react a certain way and why we, have this relationship to danger. How deep does it go? It depends on our experience, and that's what I delve into with people.
And part of it could be, well, it's also separating what is instinctual versus what is our subconscious behavior. And when we have that instinctual flight or fight response, is that something that we can, well, it sounds like you have a lot of practice with mindfulness and calm and yoga and breath and self, the self-awareness aspect. So it's interesting to say, you hear about the flight or fight response. Is that actually coming from our subconscious patterns and our embedded emotions, the trauma responses, those unresolved energies that we have within ourselves? Or is it actually part of our human physiology in some kind of way? Because it
Mm-hmm.
sounds like, if you really arrive in that place of calm and self-awareness, sorry, there's a massive dragonfly flying right around me. I thought it was going to jump right in the camera. I get distracted by animals. I'm outside. So, or insects and all sorts of things. But it's like when you become so in tune with yourself and your energy and your thoughts and your feelings, then you can actually even override that whole unconscious behavior aspect of ourselves, if it is a biological imprint that we have within ourselves, or if it's psychological or emotional or subconscious, wherever it comes
Mm-hmm.
from.
Mm-hmm.
That I feel is the achievement when you get to that place of that greater level of self-awareness and working with your own self, rather than
Mm-hmm.
allowing yourself to get carried away with these responses, these unconscious responses, which a lot of us do have. I mean, I was quite surprised at how I was feeling, because I usually don't feel fear so much. I mean, in ways, like personally, but that one really did come up quite strong for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it took a lot of time to just find my center and just be calm. And then I went through all these different layers of, okay, well, what if worst case scenario happened? Well, we would be okay. We would be able to rebuild. There's always a solution. There's always a way out. So what am I really afraid of? It's this attachment. It's this fear. Well, and you and I spoke earlier before this recording, the fear of the unknown, the
Mm-hmm.
fear, which you can talk about, the fear of losing attachments, our attachments that we have to things emotionally, energetically, mentally, habitually, these things that become activated. And if we just sit for a moment and just become still, rather than succumbing to these patterns that we have that almost come in as a response mechanism, that are very unconscious, like we're
Yeah.
allowing our triggers to influence our behaviors completely. We're not in our center when these things happen,
Yeah.
right?
Well, there's one thing that mm, we lose track of when we get in those situations where we're concerned about our possessions and our things, and inconvenience and change and rebuilding and all these things. We often forget that the universe has our back, and we're cosmic beings with much larger purposes than the little things that we preoccupy ourselves with. And so when we remind ourselves, and we can go back to that place of remembering that we are cosmic beings, and that the universe has our back, and that we will be okay. We're going to be fine. And when you can operate from that place, um, it's very helpful, because you don't get drawn down the small fear paths of losing your things or having to start over and all of that sort of stuff. You just have this broader perspective of what we're here to do and what we're here doing, and you don't succumb so much to the fear. One of the things that I often use in this kind of dealing with fear situation and finding your way back to center, not losing track of yourself, is breathing deep and doing deep breathing exercises. The unfortunate thing about this last threat is that there was so much smoke in the air, we
That's right.
couldn't breathe.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And so that was an interesting aspect to this last little, attack from nature here with these fires, was that my go-to is deep breathing, and there was no deep breathing possible. It was so thick, right? We had trouble breathing.
Yeah.
And so there are other techniques in deep breathing exercises that are, so just a little touch on breathing exercises in terms of finding that center and feeling that the universe has your back, is that there are exercises that are meant to boost us and boost our mental abilities and boost our awareness and all that sort of thing. But there are breathing exercises that are designed to lower anxiety and slow us down. And so one of the breathing techniques that's used for lowering anxiety is a shallow breathing, not necessarily that shallow, but it's very, very slow. And it's a very, very slow, stretched out exhale. And what you're doing when you're doing that is you're actually exhaling dissolved fear, dissolved emotions. And when you are in that place, that's where you can get yourself to center a little better. And so during the smoke, I was utilizing these breathing techniques of anti-anxiety, which brings it down, which actually does not require deep breathing in that sense that you're not filling your lungs from the diaphragm up and getting in all this air. Because why? We couldn't. There was too much smoke. So I went to these sessions where I would just do these elongated, extremely long, slow exhales. That lowers your heart rate, and it brings you to a place of calm, which reconnects you to yourself. Because when you reconnect to yourself, you have a chance to feel that feeling that the universe has your back, which means there is no real ultimate danger to your life, to your survival, right? Because it's all about survival. That fight or flight concept is survival driven. It's what it's all about. And so in that particular case, that's what I was doing, is to find that center. I do those extended exhales just to bring myself down to this place of comfort of I'm supposed to be here and this is all good. And there won't be anything bad happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's one of the, reminding oneself, never forgetting what we really are, not losing track of self, not losing track of this fact that we are these cosmic beings, and become the observer. When we step into being the observer of our life, as opposed to being really entrenched in it and being pushed around by the emotions and the situations and circumstances that are happening, and really, getting pushed around by those things. When we get to that place where we're able to find our center, and again, is by becoming the observer. Because now, as the observer, you actually step out, and really, our higher self is the observer. I mean, in yoga, we actually use that term, right? The term being the observer. It removes yourself from emotional response to the actual thing that's happening. And it's a little bit like, very often, when you're having your experience, you're having something happen, your vision is sort of clouded and you can't see the situation. You can't see the solution. You can't see how to get out and all that. But you look at someone else having a panic attack. You look at someone else having a conflict. You look at someone else having an argument, and you can observe it, and if they did this or did that, they would all be fixed. And so we have this ability to observe someone else's situation with a certain amount of clarity, but we don't when we're observing ourselves, right? And one of the keys to being able to is to step into being that observer of your own situation by stepping out a little bit. And meditation and deep breathing is a prep to the meditation. Meditation is, has, there's so many layers there. Of course, that's a show in its own. And then within meditation, there are periods of contemplation. And in those periods of contemplation, that's where we can work with being the observer. So that's one of the techniques that we use to sort of separate ourselves from the emotion and the reactions of the moment in whatever it is that's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, I do talk often about the getting in touch with the emotions, not in a superficial way, getting in touch with your emotions. It's really feeling the emotions and not, again, there's this resistance to kind of the integration aspect of the emotions and of self, of through the difficult feelings that we have, the stress, the anxiety, the fear, the sadness, the anger. And when it comes up, it's okay to feel them. It's okay to feel them as long as we are observing them and seeing, okay, where's this actually coming from, and sensing it, as you mentioned, as the observer. But it's almost like there are many different layers of being an observer as far as I've experienced. There's like the senses of it, like what is that sense that is coming in? How does it feel from an internal emotional standpoint? How can I observe my actions from an external standpoint? There are all these different ways to observe yourself. And the more in tune that you become with yourself, the more whole you become, the more you like move into this sort of aspect of your being where you're just translating all of these experiences that you have within yourself and within your outer world. So you become more in tune from so many different senses. You awaken more of your senses that way, I feel. Yeah, it's interesting,
mm-hmm.
especially
That's,
on the emotional side. I tend to,
yeah.
I just feel maybe it's the way I've worked through things and
Mm-hmm.
understood that aspect of the observer. And it's like, for me, it's observing, but it's also like feeling, getting
Mm-hmm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
feels. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the challenge with our relationship to emotions and our relationship to feelings is that um, it's very difficult to separate it from paradigm and from definitions. So we have our life experience gives us a whole bunch of, it gives us a framework, it gives us a viewpoint, it gives us a paradigm, and it gives us the definitions that we assign to what it is that's going on. And that's where it becomes very difficult to navigate these waters of feeling, because feeling is, of course, the real connection to what's going on. Our minds, the rational mind, takes us down all kinds of different paths. In fact, a lot of the fears that we deal with are figments of our imagination.
Mhm.
They're absolutely figments of our imagination. So, in the same way that we can not that we can imagine a bunch of fear, we can imagine a bunch of things going wrong and things just not going the way that we expect. This is this fear of the unknown that we're talking about. Is that it's related to our definitions, it's related to our experience and our paradigms. So what happens when we start to step into the world of feeling, we still have to grapple with these definitions. We still have to grapple with how exactly, what is, truly a heartfelt emotion, and what is an emotion that we're having that is actually a reaction that is actually anchored in a belief system, that's anchored in a whole bunch of rational mind stuff. So that's why, and this is something that I deal with all the time, is the time that it takes to tune into what we're talking about. We're in a society that wants to take a pill for everything, so they want instant reactions. It's like, wow, and I want to do this. And with breathing techniques, I deal with this all the time. People go, I can breathe. Everyone can breathe. So if I give me a breathing, I'll just do it. No, my path in breathing has been decades And after, 4 decades of doing this breathing and teaching it, last winter I did a major retreat in a yoga center in Thailand. And I can't believe the new doorways I opened with new breathing techniques. That's after 40 years of doing it. It's like,
We're always learning.
and so, but people want, when we're doing stuff, they go, well, just tell me how to do it and I'll just do it and it'll be done, and I'll tune into my, my calm center and I'll be fine. No, it takes practice and it takes time. And one of the things that a lot of people have trouble understanding, I think, is that, especially when I call them breathing exercises, the word exercise. The word exercise is an effort. It means you're having to do something, right? And, people just want it to be easy and they just want quick solutions. And so tuning into everything that we're talking about, tuning into your inner self, to your inner voice, to your inner messaging, to your connection to source, all of these things and how that's going to affect what you're feeling. And it's a big project. And so, one of the greatest frustrations for me in recent years has been, the observation that people are just not willing to spend the time and really do the work necessary. Breathing techniques and all of that sounds very nice and it sounds easy, but wow, the depth is incredible. And that goes to everything. That goes to meditation techniques. It goes to exercise. A lot of people not understanding that even exercise or asanas, yoga positions, stretching, what's the function of it, and and how do we get to a place where we're actually feeling the effects of it? It's not in one session, and so it's a long path.
It is. I just had something come in actually in from here somewhere.
Did you use
It's just
channel?
yeah, I guess it's it's like looking at society as a whole, like you said, when we and I've been like that where I've been also very determined and I've worked hard, and if I like something I'll put the effort in. If I want change I'll put the effort in. In and I've had moments in my life where I wasn't like that, but in other ways I still would work hard. But this is the thing I find that society can easily fall under. I feel it's fear. I feel that big umbrella of what we get caught in is fear. It's this perpetual state that we're in to survive. I need to make money. I have to get ahead. I just tell me what to do and fix me quick because I need to do this. I need to get there. I need to, it's, and I feel that a lot of it comes from fear, the way that we push ourselves, the way that we act, react. And there's also a fear of being still. And there's a fear of sitting with ourselves and feeling those emotions. Because also, too, if
Mm-hmm.
we've been used to avoiding them, if we've been used to numbing, avoiding, suppressing, things that don't make us feel comfortable, the shadow,
Mm-hmm.
then, well, then sitting there and learning about ourselves in this new way can be very fearful. And
Yeah.
it really takes this new approach because coming from the other side where I've lived, where I've been in that perpetual wheel, I've worked hard, I've been in this constant state of achieving and trying and you know, quick diets and quick programs and fad things and fad this. This is way more because when you start chipping away at yourself, everything else falls into place. The body, your life, your relationships, your energy, your success, like it all comes from that alignment within.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it does take you there is fear that you have to go through to get there on its own.
Yeah. Yeah. So the two ideas that came to mind, and the first part of what you were saying made me think of a famous line that is assigned to Roosevelt, which is, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself."
Yeah. Yeah,
And
exactly.
and so when we're working with that sort of thing, especially when it's self, because yourself, in a sense, it's your health and your survival and all of that. So we fear not surviving. We fear the threats, right? So,
Mhm.
but in order to get through it, we have nothing to fear, but fear itself is one of the hurdles, one of the gateways that we have to get through. So now we go to the second part of what you were saying, right? Which is what the application itself and doing that work. I mean, people are so afraid of silence. It was one thing that you talked
Mhm.
about there, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've noticed with some people, just through the decades of working in different environments, is some people cannot be without the radio on in the
Mm.
background, with the TV on in the
Yeah.
background. And then they get out and they get in the car and they got the radio on. And they get home and they go in the house and TV is on. And so
Mhm.
there's never any silence. And the reason there's never any silence is because they fear silence itself.
Mhm.
Because why? Well, these little niggly thoughts come up. And the thoughts that are coming up from the well of our subconscious, I call it. And the well of our subconscious is dishing up a lot from our shadow, right? It's the shadow source. And so people are very uncomfortable with shadow issues, shadow topics, shadow factors. And silence, unfortunately, makes it up front and center for people. Yeah, and a lot of people, the way they fight it is they just stay busy and
Mhm.
and have something on in the background that does not permit that silence to happen. Because when that silence happens, all of a sudden, it's your inner voice that fills the void. And that inner voice, if it's full of um, anxiety and full of worries and again this imagination that we have such a powerful imagination. And what is really important to do is to channel that imagination into imagining the future that we want, as
Yes.
opposed to imagining all the things that can go wrong.
Exactly.
So many people spend so much time imagining what can go wrong, they are stuck, you know, or they're stalled. Because why? Well, because they're too busy assigning all their imagination energy to things that will never happen. Right? you know, um, Mark Twain had a great saying where he said that he he's had a long and turbulent life and has had many traumas that may not have happened.
Hmm.
And what he was talking about was that most of the trauma and the worries that people are talking about actually never happened. It was all in their head anyways.
Hmm.
So taking the energy and the power of imagination towards creating what it is that we want is a huge factor in
Yeah.
what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really the driving force of my work too. It's if we want change, if we want something better, we think in our habitual mind, we think that what we've been doing is the way, but we haven't taken a break to stop that and go, maybe this isn't working, but I've been used to this. But what else? What's the other option? It's
Mm-hmm.
introducing that other option as stop, take
Mm-hmm.
a break, reflect, go within, try this other way. And this is where you get to create. It's really changing this whole it's like I felt for years that I was in this because I've been going through this process myself, going from that being in that hamster wheel, totally miserable and unhappy, but caught in that state. And then I've been feeling like it's been like those, those big, massive barge ships, those big ships like
Containers and stuff.
huge, massive like, imagine turning one of those around. I feel like I don't know why I kept visualizing it just this like this huge, massive U-turn. So, it takes a lot of effort, but it is turning yourself from living in the patterns and living unconsciously to living consciously and becoming the creator and creating positive change rather than getting stuck in that the mind, subconscious, the shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is the way to manifest and the way to create.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so when we look for, what are the ways to do this, we try to identify, and there's so many. modalities. There's so many ways and techniques. There's so many paths to the same destination. I remember one metaphor was when a plane, leaves, Toronto and is flying to Vancouver. The destination is Vancouver, and that's known. But the actual exact path there, it depends on what the winds are doing. It depends on, what's going on. So the path there is not necessarily going to be the same. And you have two planes fly the same trip in two separate moments. They will not go through the same path, but they will end up at the same destination. So, finding what that modality is that a person really needs to turn that ship around, because it's a big move, right? Our lives are these huge, we are a vessel, right? We actually refer to the body as a vessel. Mm-hmm. So it's got momentum and it's going in a certain direction. And to change that direction, yeah. So it's a beautiful vision, a beautiful visual that you give to it, because it is changing the direction of that vessel is huge. And so the two things that I work with is trying to differentiate between the laws of nature and things that we can't change. I call those, God-made. Those are God-made rules. And then when we're dealing with paradigms and belief systems and all these things, that's man-made. So the difference between man-made rules and regulations and viewpoints and paradigms and God-made is that we have to find our way back to these laws of nature, the laws of nature within us. So the laws of nature of whatever makes, dragonflies do what they do is one thing. That's, but the things that make us function as humans and decide what's important, what's our priorities, what are we doing, and all of that, that is man-made. And we have to really get comfortable with this idea that when we're dealing with man-made stuff, when we're dealing with stuff that we have created as a species, as humans, we have to understand if we created it, we can change it. If we created it, we can reprogram it. You can't reprogram God-made stuff. Those are laws of nature. But when it's man-made, we actually have the ability to reprogram it, to change it. But it's still a big effort. It's still a big vessel. It's still not that easy, right? So even when I look at the financial system, which is one of the big fear factors of the day, right? Everyone's living in this fear of losing their money and there's not going to be enough money. So that's the fear factor they're using. Well, who created the financial system? We did. Mm-hmm. So if we created it, why can't we fix it? Why can't we change it? Why don't we reprogram it? Why can't we, change the way that it actually works? Well, the answer is we can. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we will. I don't know how painful it'll be getting there, but
probably be have a few steps back to get a leap forward, but that's okay. I agree with you. Mm-hmm. That's the other fear topic we can talk about in another day.
Well, the fear of suffering, right? Fear of suffering is fundamental. I think that even when we talk about the fear of death, for instance, I think most people don't actually fear death because the moment we're born, it's sort of a given it is a given that we're going to die. It's the fear of how we're going to die. It's a fear of suffering that we fear. It's not the end. It's the process. It's the path. How is it going to happen? That's what we fear. So we fear suffering. So change, big change, usually brings on discomfort, brings on change, change itself. And so is change going to be painful? Is change going to be a form of suffering? Or is it a process? Is it just a journey that we take, right?
It's all perspective.
Mm-hmm.
All perspective. So let's, we're going to go into a bit of a breath exercise with you here. So what do you think?
Yeah.
What do you want to do to guide people through a quick breath exercise to reduce fear, reduce anxiety? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
Well, I think that there's one little technique that that comes from a breathing exercise in yoga that's called the Ekadasi. And it's a very wonderful breathing technique that uses a retention. So I'll take us through that. I'm just going to take us through the sort of format of it, because it takes much longer to do the actual full exercise. But I'll teach the format itself, which is in itself the foundation to bigger techniques as we go. So you ready to go?
I'm ready.
So one of the things to establish in breathing techniques and deeper breathing techniques is to make sure that we're filling the belly. We're filling the lower lobes of our lungs, which is the diaphragm area, which is above our organs there. And so breathing really deep. So a deep inhale. And one way of visualizing this is to separate the breath into 3 parts. And so it's a count of 2 to fill the belly, a count of 2 to fill the center chest area, and a count of 2 to fill up to the top. So I'll just count it through, right? So just exhale completely. And now start inhaling. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now, commonly what people say is, I'm full at 4, I'm full at 3. Well, then you adjust your breathing so that you can fit the belly into 2, the chest into 2, and the top part into 2. Because there are 3 lobes to the lungs, the lower, center, and upper. So we can try that again. For those who would go to, I'm full at 3, slow it down and fit it into the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? So one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So once we get that rhythm down of being able to do, and the little, that's a good technique for counting, by the way. So you can subdivide your breaths into these little bursts until you're full. That's a good way of getting it.
And how many,
Eventually,
how
well,
many
eventually, mm-hmm.
repetition, how many repetitions
Okay.
would you do?
Well, this is the kernel. So once you get to that point where you get the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, nice smooth all the way to full, then what we do is we do 3 breaths. So you do 1 fill, exhale, 2nd fill, exhale, 3rd fill, and on the 3rd fill, you hold. You hold your breath, and we're going to hold breath for 10 seconds.
Okay.
And at the end of the 10 seconds, you let the breath go, but not like a total like pop the balloon sort of thing. You sort of try to let it come out in a semi-regulated way. Okay, so we're going to do the full 3 this time. Okay, so empty. We're going to start now. One, two, three, 4, 6. Okay. 1, 2. Now hold and lock. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now a couple of natural breaths, whatever your body wants to do,
And
whatever.
one more question. Do you recommend breathing out the nose rather than the mouth for the whole cycle?
So breathing in through the nose and out through the nose is critical.
Okay.
It needs to happen through the nose. Anybody who's teaching techniques out the mouth is basically bypassing one of the most important functions of our body. What happens is in the nasal passages up here, we have the olfactory bulb. We have all kinds of sensors in the paranasal. It's all full of sensors. You have to also visualize that this is attached to the bottom of your brain. Okay. This is not in your foot. It's not somewhere else in your body. It's attached to the bottom of your brain. And what happens in the inhale is the sensors are analyzing everything coming in. So they analyze danger, for instance, smoke, fire smoke. You go, well, right away, your sensors go, don't do that. There's something wrong here. There's danger. So don't do that. What happens is on the exhale, the sensors are all in full function and they're analyzing your exhale. In the exhale, there are thousands of actual elements that are coming out in an exhale. And those sensors are analyzing your exhaust. And that communicates to your endocrine system. The endocrine system is your network of glands. And it makes the adjustments necessary to keep you functioning properly. So the exhale is extremely important in the breathing techniques. The only time that you exhale through the mouth is in the very initial stages for just releasing, It's just like you would do that like 3, 4, 5, 6 times if you want in preparation for the breathing technique.
Mm.
So that's when you exhale through the mouth, just generally. But all the breathing techniques, you should exhale through the nose. It's very important. Your system gets important information from that exhale. So getting back to this breathing technique, though, you see we did the 3 there, right? In, out, in, out, in, out, hold. Then you do a cycle of 5. You do 5 inhales and exhales, and you hold the 5th. And then you do 7. So the 3-5-7 comes from a breathing technique called the Ekadasi. It's a very deep system, amazing for releasing emotions. It's actually an emotion releaser. What it does is it actually works our core, and it works on this exhaling dissolved emotions and dissolved stuff. Now, the breathing technique that I use on a regular basis is the 3-6-9. Now, 3-6-9 are extremely incredible
I know
numbers,
all
right?
about, yeah, I know
In
about them.
sacred geometry and
Yeah.
Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, they're magic numbers, and so the 3-6-9 is one of the breathing techniques that I use the most in terms of really getting a day started, for instance, or even recentering in the middle of the day. So what you do is you do 3 inhales, hold the 3rd. You do 6 inhales, hold the 6th. And you do 9 inhales and hold the 9th. And that is a cycle, right? So you would do the 3-6-9 as a group, and that's your breathing exercise. Now, once you get good at it and you really start to see the benefits and you start to, oh my, this is really having an effect on me, then you do a second one. But you do the full 3-6-9. And, so you do 2 cycles. And then if you're really into it, you do 3 cycles. If you do 3 cycles of a 3-6-9 afterwards, wow, do some observing there. It's a really, it's like we feel it everywhere. Some people feel it in their hands, some people will feel it, in their head. I've had people actually get rid of a headache through just doing that. And there's something very powerful in the retention. Oh, by the way, the retention, I did 10 seconds there. My favorite number is 15 to 20.
Mm.
So sometimes I'll go all the way to 20 seconds. And 20 seconds the way to really get around that and get away from rational mind is 20 heartbeats or 10 heartbeats. So you use 10 of your own heartbeats as you're measuring. When you get into the technique a lot, in your retention, you will feel your pulse. So you just count your pulse. Count to 10, let go. So that's the 369.
Wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Thank you very much for sharing that. Well, on that note, if there's anything else that you would like to add, Marcus, here before we sign off, I will be leaving your contact info, the link to your book. If anybody wants to get a hold of you, in the description box below of this video, it's going to be video and podcast. So make sure, if you want more information, if you want to work with Marcus, even speak with him, I'll leave all that information below, and also to your book. And is there anything else that you would like to leave us with? Any pearls of wisdom before we log off?
Well, I want to say that it was great talking with you. It feels really nice. I think we covered some really good ground. I think that just never losing track that the fear factor that we're faced with is defined by our experience and defined by definitions that come from the rational mind. And it's really important to reevaluate that rational mind approach, reevaluate the definitions before really giving into that fear and having it have adverse effects on yourself, on your health, and on your situation. But, we're really stuck in rational mind thinking. And that's one of the things we have to go back to. And my next book is called I Feel, Therefore I Am. Mm-hmm. So there will be, and it's such a large topic. We like to think we know what we're talking about. We just say it and there it is. There's the idea. But there are so many aspects and so many levels to this. Mm-hmm. So reevaluate your definition of what you perceive as a fear is the one thing that I would encourage people to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Marcus. Thank you for that. That was wonderful. Again, contact information below for everyone. Thank you, Marcus, so much for being here. And I look forward to a conversation in the future sometime.
Thank you, Tara.
Thank you.